Hey everyone, I'm Tony Corpin, the publisher and president of School Transportation News. I want to welcome you back to the School Transportation Nation podcast. This episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. Our tech tip is brought to you by Zonar, and we have a special message from First Transportation Solutions driven by First Student.
Hey, hello everyone. I am Taylor Hannon, the Associate Editor of School Transportation News, and we've got some great conversations planned for today. Before we get into the details of this past week and what's upcoming in this podcast, I want to take a moment to appreciate quality leadership. I want to recognize the amazing bosses of STN Media, Tony Corpin, Ryan Gray, and Alice Hung Sabidra. Last Friday was Bosses Day, so I wanted to give them a quick shout out.
I'm blushing, Taylor. I'm blushing here. You can't see it right now. Wow. Thank you so much. Wow.
I mean, truthfully, I came into this industry right out of college, and STN has really given me both the knowledge and freedom to succeed in a journalism profession. So forever thankful.
Yeah, we've been pushing you hard, Taylor, breaking you out of your shell. You're doing webinars. You're taking part in new events, new virtual conferences. We're proud of you. You're doing a great job.
Thanks. And not only is STN's leadership pretty amazing, but also so is the transportation leaders across the nation. October is the leadership issue, and we've highlighted 10 of the industry's rising stars in October. November will feature the 2020 Transportation Director of the Year. But I truly just love speaking with all these transportation directors, managers, supervisors, and hearing their insight. I really encourage our listeners to visit stnonline.com/go/decade to read profiles highlighting those who have been in the industry for over 10 years. They're really paving the way for up-and-coming directors and leaders within the industry and serving as mentors. Lots of amazing people, and I want to give a shout out to all of them.
Yeah, we had Brooke Garcia on the podcast last week, who was one of our 10 rising stars. She's pretty awesome to have on there from Calgary, Alberta. And we had a lot of really great other people. We had Jason Nelson. He's the owner and proprietor of a podcast out there in the industry called Hey Bus Driver, and wanted to give him a shout out as well. But we have a lot of great people out there, and we couldn't do it without you, School Transportation Nation. You guys are awesome, and we appreciate you. And, we want to hear from you too. Share your questions, share your thoughts with us. We'd love to address them on the podcast. Email info@stnmedia.com.
So speaking of amazing people, I'll be speaking with Pam Martinez. She's the Vice President of Human Resources and Risk Management for DATTCO a little later. So stay tuned for that.
Exciting to hear from her. I know they're from the East Coast. They got a lot of buses they run, and I'm sure they're seeing schools ramp up. I'm hearing more and more, Taylor, throughout the industry that schools are starting up. I was talking with the transportation director the other day, and they said every week a new grade level is starting up, where you've got elementary, then middle school, then high school. And by beginning of November, they're going to be fully ramped up in Georgia over there in Cobb County. I was talking with Sam Ham. So really exciting to see school transportation coming back online. And there's a lot of excitement about getting some sense of normalcy for millions of families and kids. And I can't wait for getting my little one back in school. We're in California, so we're a little different than everywhere else. So I feel like we're trapped forever in lockdown in California. I don't know, Taylor, how are you feeling?
Well, I am still living at home, and my 16-year-old brother is finally they brought sports back. So they're finally doing a little bit with sports. They're in small groups, conditioning. They can't touch any equipment, and he has to wear his mask most of the time. So that's probably rough for a day like today when it's high 80s and he's outside wearing his mask, sweating up a storm. But yeah, California definitely has its own kind of thing going on. The California Association of School Transportation Officials held a webinar a couple weeks ago that I sat in on. And the organization leaders discussed their document they released at the end of August on reopening transportation operations. Some school districts in California are reopening for in-person education. We heard from Carlos Chicas a couple weeks ago on the podcast, the Director of Transportation for Capistrano Unified School District in Southern California. And he talked about his operations, which are starting to ramp up. But what I found interesting about the webinar was that they didn't solely talk about the school bus ride, which I think has been quite a focus for some time in this industry, but instead about, site safety and social distancing in the break rooms, ways to achieve that, as well as vehicle safety, how to limit those face-to-face interactions with mechanics when a school bus driver needs to drop off a bus that has something wrong with it. So there's an article on our website that talks about that in more detail, stnonline.com. But I just found it interesting that, with reopening, there are so many different aspects to consider. Another article online talks about Arkansas, and I spoke with one of the transportation directors there, Michael McClure. He's at Fayetteville Public Schools, and his district has been transporting students since August 24th. So he answers some of those questions that pupil transportation officials had over the summer on what transportation will look like again. So I encourage our listeners to go check out that article as well. He has a lot of great insights, and he breaks it down. What happens if there's a COVID-19 case on the school bus? What are school bus drivers doing? What are students doing to ensure that safety? But with schools reopening, COVID-19 positive cases are not looking too good. CNN just reported last week that infection rates are climbing in the U.S. as we are nearing almost 8 million positive cases. The article warned that this is going to be a tough winter, especially with flu season coming and the holidays, people gathering inside. The virus is going to be able to spread a lot easier. But 7 new states saw a record low for COVID-19 hospitalizations, just as 14 states set records for their 7-day average of new daily cases last week. So I feel like just when things are starting to get a little better, things are reopening, there's some hope, this news comes out. And it's actually super interesting, Tony. I was in Wyoming at the end of September for my friend's wedding. And I was super nervous to go, right? Traveling on a plane, you read all the headlines on how many people test positive at this one wedding. And I was like, oh my gosh, do I go? And I was contemplating it, but I decided, I can't stop living life. I have to go, but I just have to do it safely. Wear my mask, carry my hand sanitizer in my pocket, and make sure I'm wiping everything down. I masked up, I took my hand sanitizer, and I flew over there. But it was shocking the different regulations they are under compared to here in California. I mean, we're in a hotspot county in a hotspot state, LA County, in California. And here are these people in Laramie, Wyoming, with about 200 positive cases. And I drove by downtown, and people are inside at bars, hanging out, so relaxed. And it was so crazy to see because I feel like I haven't had that sense of normalcy for so long. So I was so shocked. And it really puts things into perspective, how much this virus, while it is a national problem, is all local solutions. And what works for one school district in one state could be completely different for another state and another school district. So it certainly opened my eyes to all the changing landscapes out there.
Yeah, it's interesting, Taylor, that you bring that up because I've heard that around at other states, especially with Texas. I was talking to another colleague down there and they basically said, oh yeah, we're contemplating opening bars or doing things like that again. And, school is in full swing down there in Texas again in a big way. And so at what point do those decisions create an issue where you do see a spike, where people are relaxing their behaviors? And I think that that's inherently a human thing, right? Think about when you started this whole thing, right? We were all manic. You're sanitizing your hands 10 times a day, washing your hands, Clorox wiping everything down. And here we are almost 7-8 months later. And I feel like my behavior then versus now is so significantly different in terms of how I am conducting myself. We still sanitize, we still wear a mask, but we're not quite as, I put it.
A hermit.
Yeah. We're not locked in our house forever, not living our life. I think a lot of people have just, they're crawling the walls, right? So they're ready to get out. And I think a lot of parents are ready to get their kids back in school because, it is taking a mental toll on not only the parent, but the kids. And it's a really big factor to consider when you reopen. But our little town where we're at, we're part of LA County, even though I don't consider myself LA, right? But we are LA. So, we're beholden to any regulations that fall on LA. So here we are, virtual learning for my child who's in first grade. And, we're doing our best to manage that situation in the hopes that the school will come back in 2021. All right, Taylor, talking about this week's tech tip brought to you by Zonar, leader in smart fleet management. Bus safety isn't easy, nor is it simple. You've spent months keeping up with constant change, but what are you still missing? Whether your fleet's in use, parked, or both, see what Zonar offers so you can go the extra mile to keep students, drivers, and staff safe. Over-the-air engine updates, sanitization protocols, touchless technologies. Find the gap, fill the gap. Learn more at zonarsystems.com/protect. That's zonarsystems.com/protect.
Yeah, Tony, I feel like people, especially within this industry, have been so creative and more reliant on technology recently. I mean, there's still some districts staying virtual, despite a lot of schools opening up for in-person learning, or even just doing whatever they can through the internet to limit those face-to-face interactions. There are 2 videos posted on our Facebook page, and you can find that by going to @STNMag. They were posted this past week, and one is Tom Burr. He's a transportation director at St. Paul Public Schools in Minnesota. And he's talking about what the school year is going to look like when they transition to a hybrid model. The video shows seat markings where students can sit, and he goes over those COVID-19 protocols that students are going to see when they start boarding the bus again. For instance, drivers wearing masks, boarding the school bus from back to front, that kind of thing. And I think it better prepares the students when they go to get on the bus. So it's like, oh, okay, my bus driver is going to be wearing a mask. Another video is by Mary Jo Hetrick, and she's a transportation director for Bondurant Farr CSD in Iowa. And she solved the problem of conducting and teaching student evacuation drills while faced with social distancing. The video on our Facebook page explains how each emergency exit works, how to use the radio on the bus, and what to do in certain situations if the school bus driver becomes incapacitated. So she's doing all of this virtually, and I think that's such a creative way to teach students, especially in this day and age, and she did a great job. So I definitely recommend you guys check that out. We're seeing virtual trainings more and more. Our 2020 Transportation Director of the Year focuses on that. And I don't want to give anything away, but I'm very excited for this issue to come out. What I can share about November is Rebecca Skies, the Director of Transportation for Sargent School District in Colorado, talks staffing morale and retention and how she's relied on online training and professional development to essentially keep her school bus drivers paid and on staff during school closures. So that's another option for keeping your staff employed is by having them do these online trainings. And also Pam Martinez, who's going to be speaking with us a little later, sheds a little light into that as well. So speaking of virtual trainings, Tony, I think STN is getting pretty creative too. Isn't that right?
That's right, Taylor. We just wrapped up our Bus Technology Summit in September. It was really great. And we are moving on to our first ever TSD virtual, which is our Transporting Students with Disabilities and Special Needs Conference. Ryan Gray, who you're standing in for, is master of the circus of that one, trying to pull together all the content and working with our tenured faculty and advisors and putting together a star-studded cast of experts in the field of special needs transportation. And I think we've got a great lineup. We've got a big keynote in Temple Grandin, as well as Marilyn Bull from Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. They're going to be touching on some really big topics of autism, as well as safety, getting prepared for school, cleaning protocols as it relates to child passenger restraints. Really exciting stuff to share with our audience. I think, in light of COVID-19, these particular children are at the highest risk level, and you need to be very mindful that you take care of these kids and be very careful on how they're being transported, because how you did it in the past maybe isn't the right way how you should be doing it now. So a lot of experts are going to kind of lean in and share their expertise so you stay compliant and you take care of those kiddos. So we're excited to bring everybody together on November 9th through the 11th. You can check out more information at tsdconference.com. We have the full agenda posted, Taylor, so you can go through and check out and plan, and be sure and sign up. You got time, right? Nowhere to fly to, no hotel to book. Just got to pop in and be there day of. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we're really excited to have everyone come together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I was glancing over the schedule earlier and there's a lot of good discussions that are going to be happening. I think our listeners are going to get a lot of information out of it. But I think my favorite part is going to be seeing all the industry faces again. I feel like I've been seeing the same faces all the time now. So even if it is virtually, like I just miss that social interaction. I really love BTS because I got to see my brother, Greg Jackson's face, the Director of Transportation and Fleet Services for Jeffco Public Schools in Colorado. He sat in on a session. You know, I got to visit his facility last year. He was our 2019 TD of the year. So we've really bonded throughout this year. So being able to see him again, you know, even if it was just through the computer screen, it was really nice. It brings us together.
Yeah, Greg's an awesome guy. We love him, and he made an excellent Transportation Director of the Year for 2019. And I'm super excited to introduce everyone to our 2020 Transportation Director of the Year. He is going to be on the podcast, so little hint there, but definitely look out for that interview on an upcoming podcast here real soon. But Taylor, there was another thing that I participated in recently, which was a special webinar on propane auto gas, just reviewing, you know, is it the right fuel for your fleet? And it was quite interesting to hear a variety of different comments and stories about that topic. And we had Steve Wiley from PERC, the Propane Education Research Council, on, as well as some other guests that were directors talking about their firsthand experience with propane powered buses. And what they learned is they are the true believers, right? They were trying true. They love diesel, but Sam Hamm, who's the interim director of transportation at Cobb County in Georgia, it's second largest district in Georgia, he basically told a story like, nah, I'm not really interested. And then he said, you know what, I'm gonna check out this conversation about propane, and then went back to his, I think, superintendent at the time. And he was at Fulton County Schools at that time in Atlanta, and brought that back. And they made a big investment into propane auto gas. And it was a really great story. And then we also had the director of transportation from Southwest Allen County Schools, Steve Lake, on as well. And he discussed as well kind of his experience with propane. And it was really great to get their feedback on how they invested in a power source and how interesting it was that they collaborated with the local propane provider to be sure that it was an economical and viable solution for them. And it's really great to see people collaborating together and making sure it's win-win for everyone. So just really great stuff, Taylor.
Yeah, I would agree. It was really interesting to hear from the two directors who've worked so closely with propane vehicles and, you know, the benefits they've experienced. For our listeners who want to tune into that discussion, you can go to stnonline.com/tag/webinar. So that's where you can find that, and it's available 24/7, right, Tony?
That's right. It's also under our multimedia tab. If that URL you gave is too long, sometimes I'm like, wait, what was that URL? So you can just go real easy. Go to the multimedia tab on the STN website, click that, and you can find the webinar, as well as some really great podcasts, Taylor.
Always plugging those podcasts, aren't you?
That's right. You know, Taylor, and it's all about partnerships. They're very important. And that's something that our friends at First Transportation Solutions, or FTS, driven by First Student, understand. FTS brings customized transportation solutions from the student transportation experts. FTS is powered by partnership. They can solve your district's toughest routing, maintenance, and transportation management challenges. As a seamless extension of your team, FTS experts deliver custom designed solutions specific for your student transportation goals and needs. To learn more about how they can help your district cut costs and find efficiencies, email First Transportation Solutions at firstgroup.com or visit firststudentinc.com/FTS. This message is brought to you by First Transportation Solutions, First Students' consultative arm of home to school transportation services. All right, Taylor, we got lots of crimes happening in school transportation. I open up the STN Wire reports, and it is a litany of weird things. We have a Florida mom allegedly assaulting a pregnant school bus aide. We have a Rhode Island girl, 9-year-old, kidnapped after stepping off of her school bus. That one is like super scary for any parent. You got a little more detail on that one for us, Taylor?
Yeah, did you watch the video online?
I did, and it's crazy to see. I think it got shot maybe from somebody's house. I was thinking maybe it was from the school bus camera, but the angle they got was nuts. So what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, it's terrifying. So the girl was found in the same spot about an hour later. But what's really concerning is that the victim didn't know her perpetrator, and that's super rare in those type of situations. But they did find the suspect within 24 hours of the girl's return. So that's good news.
Yeah, that could have gone ultimately another way. And speaking of that, 9-year-old boy from Louisiana steals a school bus, resulting in a police pursuit. That one is trending on social media. That one's a crazy one. Did you see that video, Taylor?
I did. And it was an 11-year-old boy, Tony. Just
was he 11? Well, 9,
yeah.
11, same difference.
Yeah, but I guess he went on for like a half an hour and the boy covered like 11 miles. It was one of those push to start engines or something. So he just had to have his foot on the gas and he just went. He was taken into police custody, though.
Well, at least the outcome was good for most of these. And if you want to check out these stories and more on the STN Wire reports, head to stnonline.com, see the news section, see the Wire reports. We'd love to have you read those stories. They're updated regularly. We've got lots of great news and information coming out all the time. And Taylor, we got some stuff coming up with National Safety Week, right?
Yes, this week is School Bus Safety Week. The theme is Red Means Stop. So if your school district is participating in that, send pictures and comments of what your school district is doing to taylor@stnonline.com. They could end up in online articles, in our magazine, or on our social media. So please share. The more content, the better. We are super curious as to what you guys are doing out there.
Taylor, I hadn't heard yet. Did the CARES Act get passed yet in Congress?
I don't think so.
Well, you know what? TransFinder isn't waiting for Congress to pass the next CARES Act. We know districts are struggling with busted budgets because of COVID-19. And to help schools, TransFinder released its own CARES Act. CARES stands for Client Aid Relief for Revolutionary Software. And TransFinder wants to get its revolutionary Route Finder Plus software in the hands of districts for as little as $4,995 to get started. CEO Antonio Civitella said he sees the CARES Act as TransFinder's investment in the heroic effort schools are undertaking during these challenging times. Tony said, because TransFinder cares, it must act. To learn more, email getplus@transfinder.com. Make sure and mention the STN podcast in the subject line. Next up, we have Taylor Hannon speaking with Pam Martinez from DATTCO.
So I have Pam Martinez here with me. She is the Vice President of Human Resources and Risk Management for DATTCO. And DATTCO is operating school buses in both Connecticut and Rhode Island. So how are you doing, Pam?
We're doing okay in spite of everything. I'm happy to report that as of today, actually this week, all of our districts are running in one capacity or another. So that's great news. And when I say in one capacity or another, what I mean by that is some are running 4 days a week. We have some that are actually running 5 days a week. And then we also have districts that, believe it or not, one ran for a week, then they have a month off, and then they're going back. And this past Monday was actually Burville, Rhode Island started up for the first time this year. So we have a lot of different things going on at DATTCO with different schedules, but we're making it all work.
That's great. How many districts are you guys serving right now?
We have 29 contracts that we're running.
Wow. And I think you said earlier you're running 1,300 school buses?
It's right now we're at 1,300. We vary between 1,300 and 1,500 typically. But right now we've got some districts that have less buses running this year. Capacity is down because our districts offered homeschooling as well as, they have the virtual. So we are down a bit.
Okay. What does that look like? Do you have some numbers on how many students or what your capacity is down by?
It's down significantly. Some buses are actually running like with 10 students, while others are running, a fairly decent load, but we don't have anyone running exactly at capacity. So that's really actually a good thing right now. So the students are able to space out on the bus, and that really provides even more safety measures than normal. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it helps with that social distancing for sure.
It does. It really does. The other thing that's a benefit for us is where we've got some districts that are going Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Others are going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we're able to utilize our drivers on days when their school's not in session. And that's really helping us get our runs covered, where there's a little bit of a driver shortage going on right now. So we're able to make it work with the different schedules.
Okay. So I actually met Pam, virtually of course, through Erin Ducharme. And Erin's an avid listener of the School Transportation Nation podcast. I want to give her a shout out. But Pam and I sat on a webinar together at the end of September, hosted by Erin, who's a part of the American Bus Association's Women in Buses Council. And kind of with that driver shortage that you mentioned, Pam, she shared a lot of interesting information that caught my attention on staff retention and training. So I kind of want to shift a little bit in that direction. With that driver shortage, how many have you lost? And is that due to fears associated with COVID-19?
So actually, when I compare the number of drivers we lost this summer compared to last summer, we've actually lost less by about 1.5%. But we're not sure what that number is actually going to look like, because anybody that called us and said, I feel I'm at high risk, or I have family members, I'm just not comfortable, we tried to be as accommodating as possible. My opinion, and here at DATTCO, we all thought it's better to work with them and retain them in hopes that in a month or two they'll come back. So we let everybody that really was uncomfortable with the situation or had a need to take a 30-day leave of absence. And then at the end of 30 days, we'd reevaluate. And we're at that 30 days, and some people have come back, and others are asking for more time, so we are extending it. But that really has helped us a lot, I think, with the retention. One of the things that we did as we were getting prepared for the startup of school, we kept saying, what do we need to do to retain our employees? How do we make them want to come back to work? And so we decided that we would really focus on making the work environment as safe as possible. Did a tremendous amount of activities, whether it's communication, preparing the building, setting up protocols, to create that environment where the drivers would feel like, okay, they're protected coming into work. And I think that had something to do, or I'd like to believe it had something to do with our high retention.
Okay. And I know you mentioned in the webinar that you guys are doing a little bit of a referral bonus. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So we're doing a $1,000 referral bonus, whether they're licensed or unlicensed. We pay $500 after the 30th day, and we pay $500 after the 90th day. We're also doing a sign-on bonus, and that's for someone that's fully licensed. And then in some of our locations, we did do a return to work bonus, and that is paid out over driving days, after 45 driving days and then 90 driving days. The dollar amount depends on the area and how significant the shortage is. And how we're paying that is we're using driving days, because we really didn't know what the fall was going to look like, or if schools are going to turn around and shut down. So we'd hate to have a bonus for somebody, working a week and then school shuts down for a month. So we did it by driving days. That's actually, I think, going to work out well for us. So we're hoping that we'll see some progress there, but it does seem to be working.
That's good. Have you gotten any referrals?
We did. We have 11 referrals.
Oh, okay. Wow.
For people responding to the sign-on bonus, we have 25 right now that have been hired and are in the system, keyed up to be paid out, on a schedule.
Okay. And so what is that training and going through the hiring process with potential applicants? What does that look like right now, especially with social distancing practices in place?
So when COVID hit, we decided that we needed to start working on utilizing technology to get people trained, whether it's the CDL classroom, whether it's our safety meetings. We wanted to embrace the technology that we had. So what we did is we started right away taking the CDL classroom portion and creating an environment that it's done through Zoom meetings. And it's working really well. But even before that, we're still doing interviews through that shutdown period, and we were doing them either a Zoom or a call. And then a second interview would take place that was actually in person. But trying to use that technology as much as possible to limit exposure to people. And then once we get behind the wheel of the bus, obviously that is different. But again, we did a training video for the trainers and the trainees, so they knew exactly what to expect when we started this process, as far as the protocols that are required for putting gloves on, putting the mask on, where we're going to sit on the bus. And then when you leave the bus, making sure they knew the areas that all had to be wiped down before somebody else got behind the wheel of the bus. So creating that environment that, again, is all about protecting the employees and the trainee.
Mm-hmm. So are all your drivers then required to wear masks?
Yes, they have to wear a mask at all times. We actually put in a lot of different protocols. And when I said in the beginning, we had spent a lot of time trying to make our environment as safe as possible. That included, we actually put second doors in some of our buildings, so we have one-way traffic in and out. We put plexiglass around all the offices, around the desks, so that it was separated from the bulk of people. We shut down when I say shut down, we removed tables and chairs from our driver's room, and we have different protocols. Instead of letting the drivers just, hang out in the driver's room between their shifts, we don't allow that anymore. It's one person in the bathroom. The coffee pots and all the things that were what made a driver's room nice, we've shut down for the time being. And stopped using our water coolers. You have to use water from the tap now because of people taking their water bottle if the mouthpiece touches it. So a lot of work went into just communicating and getting the buildings ready. Our floors have markings with 6 feet to keep people apart. And then we also created, it was a training program that every employee had to go through before they returned to work. And that was on the safety protocols. Every day they have to answer screening questions. And then we had to make sure that they knew how to use their PPE, put it on, take it off, and how to clean their areas. And then we gave them all safety kits. So every driver received 5 masks, a box of gloves, goggles, towels, hand sanitizer, spray bottles that had cleaning material in it, and then a sign that says, "This bus has been sanitized." So the driver puts that on the seat if the bus has been sanitized by them, and the next person coming on knows that the bus is safe. So all those different protocols that we set up to make sure that we're keeping our drivers as safe as possible.
Wow. That's definitely something STN is looking at more. What are those retention strategies? What are those things that are going to help with employee morale and staffing? And it seems like you guys at DATTCO have it pretty figured out.
Well, and some other things that we did that we don't normally do. We usually do our raises mid-fall, and we're still doing the raises at the same time, but we announced them earlier. So people knew what the raises were going to be. And we enhanced some of our benefits. So we announced that early on, hoping that would encourage people to come back as well.
So kind of looking back at the training and the hiring process, I remember you mentioning that one of the biggest holdups you guys are experiencing is with the DMVs.
It is. So what happens is, as you know, once the driver's gone through the training to prepare to take the written tests, they have to go to DMV to take their permit test. And right now, the permit test to get scheduled is taking anywhere from 5 to 6 weeks. So somebody comes in the door and we give them their classroom, and then there's a holdup. We have nothing to do with them for that long period of time. So trying to keep communication with them so we don't lose them is really becoming challenging. It's really quite the obstacle. And this is for Connecticut. And also in Connecticut, the background checks basically take about 8 weeks. So we're really delayed from the time somebody interviews to the time we can actually get them behind the wheel. It really is a huge, huge obstacle. The permit test is we're really struggling with. Even though the background check will take up to 8 weeks, and sometimes it's longer, it used to be about 18 weeks. So 8 weeks now to us is seeming like it's nothing. It was really bad at one point. But at least we have them behind the wheel and we can be doing things with them. On the permit, waiting for the permit, we can't get them behind the wheel. So it's really hard to keep them engaged during that time.
Mm-hmm. Have any applicants just been like, you know what, this isn't worth it. Like, I can't wait this long?
Yes, that does happen where they give up out of frustration because it is too long of a process.
Do you have any like strategies you can share to maybe keep them?
Well, we are trying to communicate with them as much as possible. We are trying to see anywhere where there might be an opening earlier, and we let them know that we're trying to do that. So it's really about keeping in communication with them. But it is definitely a challenge.
And then can you elaborate, about the shared work program?
Sure. So the shared work program is actually a federal program. And it was, I believe, originally designed for mostly manufacturers when there was a downturn in business in order to help retain employees. Instead of, let's say you had a workforce of 40 people and you need to lay off 20, you'd keep all 40 people, except everybody would get a reduced work schedule and they would work 20 hours instead of 40. And then the shared work program would kick in and pay a partial unemployment to them. And the nice part about this is it's not part of the regular state program. So as far as it using up their time, if they do get laid off, that's allowed under a state program. This is totally separate from it. A company needs to apply. You have to include the employee's name, how many hours they normally work, and how many hours they're currently working. And as long as the reduction is between 10 and 60%, they're eligible. So under normal unemployment, if an employee, just lost 10% of their pay, they're making too much and they're not able to collect. Under this program, they can. So I reached out to the Connecticut Department of Labor because I had heard where our governor was trying to be more flexible with this program in light of what's happening. And I called to say, I explained how a lot of our drivers are now on a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day. And would they be eligible for the shared work program? And they said that they should be, and they encouraged me to apply. So I have applied for that for those drivers that are only working 4 days. My application is in. So I'm waiting to hear back. But if it works, it's really a win-win for the employee and for the company, because I think that will also help us retain. Because, let's face it, who can have a 20% reduction in your pay every week? Where if this can help subsidize, I think it's going to be great. So I'm really hoping the application will be processed and approved in a short manner. It's supposed to be done within 30 days, I should know. So I'm really hoping, because I do think that will help our drivers. And the nice part about this is the employee doesn't have to fill out anything, go online every week. We, every week, will have to submit their hours on their behalf. So to the employee, it's painless. And then they receive their benefit. And if the federal government comes up with a subsidy again, like they did the $600, if anybody is on this plan, they automatically get the federal subsidy as well.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm really excited when they told me that I should apply for the drivers.
Yeah, that's probably good advice for, transportation officials nationwide.
Yeah, if each state is a little different, but it is a federal program, and it's not just our drivers, it's our monitors and aides too.
Well, that's great. I really hope you guys get approved for that.
I'm hoping.
All right. And before I let you go, I got to ask my technology question. Have you guys implemented, or are you looking at any new technology to help kind of alleviate some of the challenges presented by COVID-19?
So what's interesting is we really had the technology that we have recently started to use that we just never used. So our safety meetings, we have safety meetings every month in all of our different terminals. So it utilizes a tremendous amount of time from our safety personnel to go out and do these monthly 1-hour meetings, where now we videotape them. We send a link to our drivers and they can go on and listen at their leisure. And there's a quiz at the end, so we know if they understood the material. And there's also a place for comments and questions. It has become much more efficient in that manner. And we just never utilized that. We just always went out to the locations. And then I had mentioned earlier that we were doing CDL training, our classroom portion, now online. And before, we would have centralized locations. So we'd be waiting, and one of the locations would be late getting there. So everybody used to have to sit and wait. Now everybody is having the exact same meeting. So we know it's a uniform message, and it's just so much more efficient, and it's really helping us. The other thing that we always had that we just never utilized is we collected everybody's cell phone information and put it into a database. And now we send text messages to our employees. And with the text message, it's usually a message to say, check the employee portal because there's a new information or something important. And again, in the past, we never had an employee portal. So this pushed us in order to keep the communication when things were basically shut down, keeping the communication up and running. And we just are continuing to utilize it. And we're finding out it's such a great tool that was right at our fingertips that we just never implemented. So, in such a sad, horrible situation, there are some positives that have come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier, about how it seems like the industry has really gotten creative in ways that it's finding solutions to these challenges. Absolutely.
It's funny to say, but I think communication has actually improved.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys experienced any learning curve with those drivers, now utilizing this technology?
We have a little bit, but our managers have been really helpful, and we have an IT department that they're made themselves available to help as well. So not as many challenges as we thought we were going to have, because every time we talked about technology and using a smartphone, a lot of the drivers still have flip phones, and there was always a lot of resistance. And so we were concerned, but very few people really had problems.
Oh, that's great.
It really was a nice surprise for us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Pam. I want to thank you for coming on, and I really do hope to meet you in person one day and not just over the computer screen.
That would be nice.
But we all appreciate you taking time to speak with us, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks to Taylor Hannon and Pam Martinez for great conversation. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the School Transportation Nation podcast. Stream all our previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or at stnpodcast.com. Also, we'd love those 5-star reviews. Make sure and leave them for us. We'd love to hear from you as well. Don't forget, email us at info@stnmedia.com. Shout out to TransFinder, Zonar, and First Transportation Solutions for supporting this podcast. We couldn't do it without you. Make sure and check those guys out. Visit stnonline.com for all your news analysis on everything in student transportation. Register now for the TSD virtual conference and trade show at tsdconference.com. Can't wait to see you next time. School Transportation Nation, we love you.